Hey friends, it's that time again. Kenny Jahng here with the Church Tech Today podcast. And today we're sitting in downtown Boulder, Colorado, beautiful Boulder, here at the AI the Church Hackathon sponsored by Gloo. And I've gathered a wealth of wisdom and expertise here at the table.
Where are they?
And we're going to talk about AI, AIO, as I call it. Why don't we just get right down to it and introduce yourselves to our audiences and our friends here watching today. So, JP, why don't you go first?
Yeah, I'm James Poulter. Everyone knows me as JP. I lead AI and innovation at House 337, formerly Vixen Labs, the agency that we were running up until just last year.
Okay.
My name is Jason Malec. I work here at Gloo with the AI team.
And I'm Nils Smith. I'm the head of innovation at Dunham & Company.
So, let's just get to the first question that I've been getting, because not many people know what a hackathon actually is. So would one of you gentlemen just share what goes on at a hackathon? What is this thing that we're doing?
Jay, you're hosting.
I'm hosting.
Yeah.
Yeah, so a hackathon is an opportunity for technologists, strategists, media people to come together to essentially take on problems, call it societal problems. Here we're talking about the 5 dimensions of human flourishing. And so teams have been divided up, 3 to 5 maybe folks per team. There's 40 teams here that are competing to build new and innovative technology revolved around artificial intelligence that solve problems in any of those 5 dimensions of human flourishing.
Right. And the teams arrived on Friday, and they're working around the clock until Sunday morning, where the judging is going to happen. And there's going to be prizes and celebrations and things like that. So
a lot of pizza and deodorant.
A lot of Red Bull, Taco Bell late night runs, a lot of fun. So one of the things that I love about these hackathons is that you just see a lot of imagination at work. I had a very good conversation with Tim from YouVersion, their R&D department. And what he asked a great question is like, what gets you excited about technology and faith and religion right now? So as you're roaming the tables and seeing all the projects and the collaboration happening, what is inspiring you in terms of the future of technology and Christianity, religion, faith? Anybody?
Well, I think the thing that's interesting is that they're not just solving kind of faith-based problems. These are people problems. They're things that real people face every day, right? Whether that's on the kind of back end of some of these applications they're building on, how much time does it take to transcribe audio or edit things down or, translate into another language? And AI is just completely transforming those experiences. But there's also then unlocking stuff for people at the other end, which is individual people, you and I, trying to disciple people or, do evangelism or read the Bible or, hold just church community together in a way, which is, let's face it, like it's difficult in a world of digital distraction and, people, particularly post-pandemic, being spread around the world in different ways. They're solving real problems that will affect people's experience of what it means to come to know Jesus and go on a journey of knowing him. So that's what's exciting, is that this technology is unlocking things that just were not possible. I was going to say 5 years ago, but even 2 years ago, 12 months ago. And we're seeing like the first fruits of what that could really mean for some of both the big players, like some of the big, faith tech ecosystem people, and also just individual developers that have come with an idea. And and a good idea can come from anywhere, and it shows. Well,
I love it. Now, for the audience, maybe Jason or Nils, are there any specific ideas you've heard of or seen that these guys are working on, just to give them some concrete ideas of what's going on at this hackathon? What type of problems, what type of solutions are you seeing?
There's 2 that come to mind that really stood out to me. One is some language translation using AI. And I think practically, as we think about the Great Commission, what a great opportunity we have today. And I think historically through media, we've had a unique opportunity, but now you combine that with language translation and how AI is making that more efficient. And so that's really exciting. Another is, I saw basically use of a large language model with input data that's allowing people to basically go through an apologetics journey of, if somebody coming from another faith, to learn about Christianity, it's got so much data in there to help answer their questions. And so what I'm seeing, I think that really excites me with that is just practical application. I think historically, when I come to things like this, I see a lot of cool tech, but just because we can do it doesn't mean we should do it. And it's maybe an off, it's not going to be used by that many people, where what the things that I'm seeing built here are practically going to be used by tons of ministries and have so much application. And so that progression is really exciting.
Jason, what about you?
I'm gonna answer maybe the two questions you asked. The first was, why is this different? Why is this significant? And it's interesting. I think about what's going on in the news. I think many of us probably read the article about OpenAI being valued at, what was it, $150 billion yesterday. Yes. That's amazing. But OpenAI is solving some interesting problems. What's happening here, there's probably not many folks here that are going to be valued at $150 billion, but they're solving, to JP's point, some very real, very human issues. One of those that I've seen, and we've just begun to see some of these solutions coming out, revolves around mental health, identifying what some of the chronic issues are, acute issues, and figuring out how to connect people in real time to help solve some of those mental health issues. So it's really fun to see these things develop.
And the thing is, with some of that stuff, particularly you mentioned like with the large language model examples, the ease of accessing that technology has now become so interesting, because it's like, we've got people in there that are developers. Some of them have got a long development careers. Some of them are literally stitching together with a bunch of consumer level tools, which again, I feel like that's just that kind of low and no code solution thing has really come into the fore in the AI space. Like, we saw it in web apps, we saw it in mobile, but now with, people being able to pull, even code pulled together by ChatGPT, right. Some of these guys are building stuff where they're working with an AI model to build a new AI tool, which is just, there's some kind of weird digital inception thing going on. But like it's crazy exciting how much potential there is.
So we're in this little bit of a bubble though, right? The way there's innovators, technologists, people who are future forward thinkers, and they're creating solutions that will actually work.
Yeah.
What do you think it's going to take for the general pastor, church staff market to really adopt or embrace these things? Because as I'm going out to different audiences and groups and workshops and ministries, I think you all see it too, that there is a general hesitancy and reluctance and sometimes just downright fear and objection to AI. What do you think the hurdles are going to be for mass level adoption, or what does it take to get to the tipping point where most churches are going to be comfortable in embracing AI? Any of you guys?
I think it's probably just ease of use. I think when we even look at the adoption rate culturally, with ChatGPT being the fastest adopted technology in history, I think actually in culture we're not as resistant to this technology, and I don't sense it even with church leaders that there's some concerns, and I think that's healthy to have some concerns, but I think it's actually how to use it and understanding how to use it. And I think this is in some ways needing technology that is made for the purposes of ministry. And so I think that intentionality and I think just good user interface goes a long way in how you build a product that ministry leaders can use effectively.
I think we're seeing this trend at the moment, which is similar to what we saw about 10 years ago when people started bringing smartphones into the workplace. And we talked about like bring your own device. I think we're going to have bring your own AI, which is that because many ministries, churches, organizations, enterprises are reluctant, and it's not just the church that's hesitant, right? It's the same in corporate spaces as well. But individual people we know are adopting this technology. We've just done this study, which is coming out this next couple of weeks, which is going to show that around about 35% of people in America are already regularly using, as in every week, using some form of generative tool. Over half have at least tried it in the past month. When that happens at a kind of individual congregant level, there's going to be a trickle-down effect where they're coming to their pastor or they're coming to their minister or organizing team and saying, hey, I'm using this, why aren't you? And that bring your own AI thing, I think is going to actually begin to have that catalyst effect to make us get to the tipping point much quicker than we saw in social media, as we got started about 10 years ago.
So your question was, what's it going to take for this to kind of be democratized, to be accepted in the church?
I'm assuming you agree with me that there is a general reluctance, and that as amazing as the teams here are going to produce amazing results, the next question is adoption, right? We got to get them to the...
I think to some extent, how we've answered the question, to this point is really addressing early adopters and maybe that next wave. I do think there's a group of people that are going to be highly resistant. And I think what it's going to take for the kind of corpus of people of faith is probably a new level of governance, a new level of trust, a new level of confidence in the models, and that these models are actually representing information that they claim to represent. And that's going to take time.
That's right.
You know, we at Gloo just launched the Christian Aligned Large Language Model, and we're intentionally trying to build models that actually serve people with integrity, with confidence, to give them confidence. And I think over time, as we develop regulatory, kind of governance issues, hopefully we can earn trust and confidence.
Yeah. And that came out, we had a working group here at the hackathon a couple of days ago, thinking about what are some of the ethical issues that we need to kind of address, whether that's the engagement with youth or, people with, kind of protected, classifications, all the way through to, CCTV in church and having AI over the top of facial recognition. Like, there's some really interesting issues to unpack. I was encouraged that we said that there would be a working group that would come around ethics and, begin to think about publishing that stuff. So there's a movement behind this. And to, kind of the point that Nils made earlier, I can think back to what we went through with the web and what we went through with social media. And it took a long time for the church to engage with it in a healthy way and not see it as some kind of evil thing we have to push back on. We're 24 months since ChatGPT came out at this point, and there's like 40 different Christian-based teams in there coming up with AI ideas. And we're sat here having a podcast talking about AI ethics in the church. Like, that acceleration is crazy quick. Massively.
Yeah.
So actually, I'm really encouraged by that, because the engagement that there is in this topic is so much bigger than there was in previous go-rounds. I think we've also learned the lessons of the past. We've seen the downstream effects of social media. We've seen the negative stuff that can come, but also the massive opportunity. And so we approach it with open arms in this space as well. That there can be problems, but there's also huge chances for the gospel.
There's a thread in there that I want to explore a little further, because it seems like there's a clear group of early adopters, say we are included in that, where we see the opportunity, the upside of AI, but I don't think any of us would agree with the statement of everyone should be all in on every use of AI, right?
Yeah.
And the ones that have concerns, which is the majority right now, I think would feel more comforted to know or hear, where are the boundaries that we feel that AI should not be used? Or where's the caution? What are the concerns? I wonder if each of you can just maybe think of one area or concern that we feel like, oh, that's a little bit past the line where we should go, or we should really think about this twice.
Yeah, I think of two things when I think about church ministry in particular. One is in sermon delivery. I think AI can be a great tool to help you prepare your sermon. I don't think AI should write your sermons.
Whoa, really?
Yes.
Go ahead. I'm almost like I'm getting ready to gear up.
I think practically there's a side of, we need that just even context of who your congregation is. It needs to come. Like, I feel like God gives His people the word for the word through their people to shepherd, and so I feel like it's that sermon. But that said, I think it's going to create maybe 90% efficiency in your sermon preparation, just like Google brought efficiency in your sermon preparation, the internet from a information access.
At the risk of derailing this whole episode and making this about this one issue, I'm going to posit this one question, right? Okay. Because what if, and we know that, say you have an average preacher preaching a sermon. We know the SBC denomination last year put out a report that I believe almost 50% of the churches did not baptize a single person this past calendar year.
50%.
Something like it. It's under 50%, but it's double digits.
Yeah.
You can ask ChatGPT to check.
Yes, we could ask Perplexity to check that, right?
Okay, right.
There's a significant number.
Yeah.
We know with the capabilities of AI in ability to generate persuasive, logical, theological threaded works.
Yes.
That whether it's today in 2024 or a year from now, 5 years from now, at some point, I'm going to be able to generate a manuscript for a sermon that is more, quotes, productive, right?
Yes.
On that measure alone. So if we're using that metric as success of how many people do you bring to Christ that are going to get baptized.
Yes.
We know, I think you can bet on the fact that AI at some point will be able to generate sermons that are more productive on that one measure alone.
Yes.
On a regular basis.
Yeah.
How can you argue? How can you argue against we'd rather have less baptisms, less people coming to Christ, and not use artificial intelligence to generate those sermons.
Your podcast may get blown up.
Yeah.
After this.
Right, yes.
Well, there we go.
Yes.
I feel like that the human element is probably more so empathy than anything else. As a pastor, you have empathy with your congregation.
I'm just going to cut you off there. Let's go back to those metrics.
Okay.
So you're saying that empathy will cover the fact that you're not as productive on bringing people to Christ than the AI generated sermon. And ChatGPT just came out with a new model that introduced reasoning, right?
Yeah.
When it generates empathy,
Yes.
when you actually have AI in everyone's phones and understanding personal AIs, right?
Yeah.
Where you have all that connected together. We have some of the projects here trying to.
This feels like a false dichotomy.
This is a false dichotomy. You're antagonistic.
Well, I don't know.
Here's why I think this is a false dichotomy,
Okay.
because you gave a good example earlier. When I preach, I consult, prior to ChatGPT being a thing,
Yes.
Google.
Yes.
I do my research in my bookshelf behind me, but I also supplement it with lots of Google
Yes.
stuff. Does that mean that I somehow remove the empathy, or that somehow it's no longer, it doesn't have the integrity of me preaching that sermon? I would argue that any preacher, maybe not all, but any preacher should be free to consult GPT to maybe supercharge, to do some of the research, to inform.
Yeah.
But the heart, the empathy, should also be a part of it.
Well, but what
Preaching is an embodied experience.
Yes. Yeah.
And that incarnational moment is really important. And I think that's what you're getting at.
Yeah. It's a good
I
word.
don't want there to be a false dichotomy.
Well,
that
is it really a false dichotomy? Because you're talking about, okay, a local pastor knows their congregation. The average American church right now, I think, at least in one major denomination, attendance is down to 60-something people. I get that. But what about Billy Graham in a stadium where you have mega pastors? They do not know how to empathize with all those seats in section CC, so the row 12.
Sure.
And at that point, you have an AI that can actually bring that person to Christ.
Good.
Well, I don't know what the answer is, but I feel like that's a question we need to think through now.
Well, there is, because there's two different dimensions to this. One a very spiritual one a very human one.
Okay.
The spiritual one being that in that moment of sermon creation, preparation, you mentioned the word preparation, Jason, which I think makes a lot of sense, is that there's a difference between preparing something, preparing even a really great prompt and giving that to ChatGPT and then saying, polish this up and write this.
Correct.
Rather than saying, write me a sermon on 1 Corinthians 13.
Absolutely.
And what comes out the other end of the sermon of 1 Corinthians 13, I'm not saying that God can't use ChatGPT to do that, because he can use all things.
Of course.
But then this comes the human element, which is the thing I worry about, is that when we start saying we can give over the entire act of doing that to an AI, it breeds in us our base senses, which is basically laziness.
Yeah, right.
And so do we want to default over to bad habits of becoming lazy and using AI to do that? So there's a balance to be found in these things. I don't think it's one or the other, but it's that we have to, thoughtfully and prayerfully, kind of approach the throwing and say, am I called?
And I think you're bringing the Holy Spirit into this.
Yes.
And I think at the end of the day.
Sure. I'm with you. I do think, though, at the risk of, flooding my inbox with hate mail.
Kenny at ChurchTechToday.com.
Thank you, Jim. Thank you, Jim. I'm going to have to change my entire
email.
I mean, I don't know if it's removing the Holy Spirit. Like, if you, again, this is not where I'm saying we should default to going first, but at some point in the future, where we're reaching AGI, where the intelligence of the machine is greater than us. The mental capacity, the faculty, the empathy, everything is, the reasoning is greater than our own capabilities. Should we re-look at the role of what the pastor is, the office of the pastor, and if you can free up 15, I don't know how much the average pastor, I wonder what the research is.
15 to 20
is it
hours,
10 hours, 15 hours, sometimes 20 hours? Saturday night, you're still in 22, 20, you're pushing hours. Could you free up more than that? 80% of that time, could you spend, what is the value of 18 one-hour coffees a week, 52 weeks a year with your people versus being in your study and building a manuscript.
Well, but isn't that like breaking down actually like what we're asking pastors to do though in the modern context?
That's what I'm saying. It's the office of the pastor, the role of the pastor, expectation.
But we do see, right, that Paul kind of says like, we are given first teachers and pastors and helpers and guides. And so teaching is a specific kind of gifting, ministry and calling, a part of that specific thing out, and teaching separate outside of the role of pastoring and what you're saying, and that is kind of 18 coffees that week. So I think what we have to like really think through is there's a difference when you sit there and go, I'm picking what passage we're going to write about or the topic we're going to read about or we're going to dig into this, versus just saying, write me a sermon. I think if there's literally a button on a website somewhere that says, write me a sermon, click a button and here's my sermon for the week, then we have to ask like, okay, well then are you really called to be a teacher? Because that's not teaching, that's delivery.
Sure.
And so what I think that's what we're asking is like, will we see people be more efficient in their teaching? Sure. But we don't want people just to become like, Domino's delivery boys
actors.
But I just wonder, where is it just that, maybe this is a whole other podcast series that we need to have. But I just have this question that maybe we need to rethink that role. And that says, even in that congregation of 60 people, if you had 18 extra hours to meet with people 52 weeks a year, wouldn't you be able to employ more empathy? How many times will you have a coffee with any given person in your 60-person congregation, 100-person congregation this year?
Yes.
Could you do more damage for the good of the gospel than, right? Then, it's the wrong choice to win this. I'm working against myself right now here.
For the good. For the
good. Can you make a bigger dent? In meeting with people 5 more times a year, 10 more times a year, and really get to know them, pray with them, and look at the office of the pastor differently. Anyway, I'll just leave it there.
And I'll button it up. If you've ever read the Reformed pastor, Richard Baxter, tells the story of the parish pastor in Kidderminster, England, who models
it's a great
house to house, Kidderminster, house to house parishional pastoral work, where over the course of an entire year, Richard Baxter said, the pastor is supposed to meet with their congregants in their kitchen and pastor them.
Yes.
So now there's a debate.
Yes.
Obviously.
So you totally agree with me, Jason. I understand that.
But you say that, but I think I don't want to open up a different. Well, you asked, like, what are the different issues? We talked about sermon generation, but the other thing we're seeing in there, you use the example of the bot that's looking at kind of suicide prevention and mental health. Because we are also seeing people trying to hand off some of the pastoring jobs.
Yes.
Now that to me, I think is equally interesting, and opportunity is huge, right? As if in certain contexts where churches are more than 60 or 80 people, how do you get around?
I love that.
Well?
I love that.
So there is an interesting issue to come dive into there, because with these, you mentioned the for those that are tracking with this, like the new models that have come out this week as we're recording, ChatGPT have released what's known as more reasoning-based models. Now, the problem with a reasoning-based model is it's no longer just predicting the next word in a sentence. It has its own logic framework within it that it's working on. If we're going to build some of these solutions on top of that, we have to be asking, what is the ethical reasoning that's going on underneath?
You can't just assume that it's
precisely.
Well, and I'm not sure we know.
We don't know. I think the future of things like Calm is exciting to me, because as we begin to see those models go from just being language models to reasoning models, we can actually maybe see a version where we can begin to align a reasoning AI around certain Christian ethics. And then you maybe can unlock some of those more pastoral conversations, as long as they're human guidance, right? Like, as long as the human's in the loop within those situations, I think you can begin to maybe scale the role of the pastor. So we can then begin to rethink this balance between there may be 18 hours saved from sermon preparation. It doesn't necessarily mean those 18 hours have to go straight back into a bunch of coffees just for the sake of it.
Awesome. Well, I'm going to ask you guys to hold that thought. I want to talk about the suicide. There's multiple projects we're talking about suicide and intervention of AI. But we're here at the end of our time for the podcast. We're going to tease a part 2 of this conversation. So I want you to hang on. Do me a favor. Drop a comment below. You don't need to email me personally. Drop a comment here below with your thoughts on the knockdown, drag-out fight that might happen here. Would you like to go us a little deeper on that initial question about AI and sermonizing? But in this next episode right after this, we'll be talking about more boundaries of suicide, pastoral care, and other things like that. And we'll catch you here in the next episode of the podcast.